3 amber peaty pools had partially dried out. The rain will come, everyone said, hopefully soon enough to prevent a fire in the pine woods or the moor. She tried to imagine such a fire, the crackling of the bone-dry heather, the whoosh as the pine needles flared up, the hot sweet smell of smouldering peat. It should have frightened her, but it didn't. Not until she thought of the green woman and man ablaze, the leaves and winding branches that made up their bodies a mass of fire, like back when they'd burned women as witches. That was an image she didn't like. The crack of a twig underfoot caused her to turn in anticipation. She rose to greet him, hearing his footsteps cross the needle-strewn forest floor, feeling a surge of desire. Her smile, at first warm and welcoming, slowly shifted to something very different as she realised the footsteps were multiple, and none of them were likely to be his.
Greg, now. Blood hit the mirror in a fine spray. Cursing, he grabbed a towel and wiped his face, his hand, and then the mirror. So much blood for such a small cut. He was examining the damage when a sleepy Joanne appeared beside him to kiss the wound. There, she said. All better. She laughed. For a man who can cleanly butcher a deer, you seem a little careless with your own face. There was a smear of blood on her lips. He put his mouth on hers, tasting it. This is what it had been like since the moment they'd met in London. This gnawing hunger for her, which had never abated. Taking her in his arms, he lifted her onto the surface. She laughed as he moved to position himself between her legs. Later, when he was finally dressed, she asked if he might pick up a few things in the local shop for her. He assumed an amused smile. I'm out on the hill all day. You could take a walk down yourself. She didn't look keen to do that. Caroline doesn't like me, she said with a wry smile. I told you, it's not personal. Besides, you don't strike me as a big fearty. What's a big fearty? She demanded. Something you're not. He kissed her firmly. There are venison steaks in the fridge. I'll cook them when I get back. He headed out to the Land Rover, releasing his 2 labs, Cal and Sasha, from their kennels to jump into the back. In the glen below, where Blackrig nestled, the morning sun had burned off most of the mist, although faint spirals of it still rose from the surrounding pine woods like spirits escaping the dawn. Settled now in the Land Rover, he glanced in the rearview mirror to find Joanne, still in a state of undress, observing his departure. He hooted the horn in response to her wave, and thought back to the moment they'd first met. Greg. Then. Alighting from the Caledonian sleeper in the early morning, he'd been greeted by a solid wall of heat and city smells. It had been hot overnight in the single-berth cabin, so much so that he'd eventually lain naked in the bunk, rising early to wash and dress before his coffee and croissant had been delivered by a cheerful guard. Gaining the platform had felt like stepping into an oven. He'd almost forgotten just how sweltering it could be down here during the summer months. It wasn't his first time in London, but the virus had prevented his annual visit to advertise the Blackrig estate at the Highland Game event. Lockdown had hit the estate and its associated hunting and fishing visitors hard. Now it was time to start it up again. So, as head gilly on the small Highland estate, he was here to spread the word that visitors were welcome at Blackrig once more. Walking towards the exit, he found himself dodging the swarms of people that filled the concourse, his brain still wired into the 2-metre rule, or a coffin's length apart. True, a few folk in the crowd were still wearing masks. As for the rest, it looked like the mass deaths had already been forgotten in the UK's capital city. Not so in his own neck of the woods, he thought. Not everyone in Blackrig was happy about opening up again to tourists, and there was a very good reason for that. Greg shoved that thought to the back of his mind.